country. Fast forward in 2006, when the VCTF Act was passed, there have been some emergence of private equity practice, those that are of local origin and others that are coming from different countries that operate within the country. I think in this context, there's a bit of a need for investor education and also the small and medium-sized sector or business education for people to appreciate that you can finance your business in other forms by using private equity and venture capital other than the traditional bank funding which people do know.
The Venture Capital Trust Fund Act, to be precise, Act 680, is an act of parliament that established Ghana Venture Capital Trust Fund in 2004. The mandate or the act mandated VCTF to do two main things. The first is to provide funding to SMEs, small, medium enterprises, through venture capital financing companies, or what we usually call fund managers. And then the second mandate is to develop the venture capital industry or the venture capital ecosystem.
So the Venture Capital Trust Fund actually is an investor and it's also a market builder. So we support first-time fund managers, we raise funds, and we invest as a catalytic investor. Usually that is what is supposed to happen because government has to catalyze the market for other investors to follow.
And again, in this area, we have done some quite amount of work, but we still believe that there is more to do. And one thing that has been lacking is an association that becomes the mouthpiece of the venture capital private equity industry. Over the years, the various players in the industry have been working on their own, and we at Venture Capital Trust Fund, as more or less apart from playing our role as an investor, has become was the mouthpiece of the industry. But we decided that there is a need to bring all industry players together so that we form an association that becomes the mouthpiece of the industry that will bring the players in the industry also together. And that is what we see today.
The private equity and venture capital industry is a nascent industry that, if adequately supported, can contribute immensely to Ghana's economic agenda. However, there are a few hurdles that must be addressed in order for this to happen. One of them being regulation. We need to ensure that we can engage the regulator to formulate the right regulation to stimulate the growth of the industry. Second, government policy, ensuring that government has the right policies in place to make Ghana a favorable private equity and venture capital investment destination. And then finally, there is the issue of ensuring that the investors the industry players deal with, as well as the companies we invest in, are protected. And so
good morning, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen.
That as an industry, we all
please get settled as we begin the program. Thank you very much. I want to ask for the door to be shut so we can begin. Welcome again. Good morning, distinguished guests, friends from the VC community and the PE community, friends from the financial services, friends from media. Thank you so much for being here to be part of a very important program. My name is Bernard Avile, and I'll be your MC for today, and I'm also one of your two moderators for the panel discussions. Today, we're here for two reasons. We're here to launch the Ghana Venture Capital and Private Equity Association, and we're also here to take stock of where we are as an industry and where we want to get to. And we're using two very incisive panel discussions to achieve that. If you're happy to be here, please put your hands together for yourselves. Thank you. The thing about a program like this is that everybody knows everybody, which is good. It means that you can cut out a lot of the formalities. But it's also bad because it means we're a very small community. And one of the aims of the program is to grow the community qualitatively. So the next time we come here to celebrate the first anniversary of the association, it will be a much bigger hall with more interesting people. Having said that, I want to start by introducing some of our functionaries. Then we will run through the program. We'll hear from our key sponsors. And then we'll do 2 big panel discussions. In the middle of that, we would have the launch of the association as well, and hopefully give it some good media traction. Is that a good idea? Are we happy? Are we excited? Great. So let me first acknowledge the presence of the chairman, and he's Mauli Ababio. He is the managing partner of Phoenix Capital Partners. Put your hands together. I think it's fair to say Mauli is a pioneer of PE in Ghana with over 30 years of experience. Mauli, thank you. We appreciate you for what you do. Thank you very much. We also want to acknowledge our sponsor, and this is the Venture Capital Trust Fund. The CEO is Yao Osu Brempong. Please put your hands together for Mr. Osu Brempong. And he has over 17 years experience in this area, and we're very happy he sponsored us. Thank you for your sponsorship. We also have a very wide array of interesting people within the Vcpe space that I'll be introducing throughout in the course of the program. But what I want to do now is to invite Mauli to open us, give us a few thoughts, and set the scene for what will be an exciting 2 hours. Please put your hands together for Mauli one more time. Use my mic. Yeah, how are you? I'm very well. Good to see you.
Thank you. These are days of rich. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It really is a pleasure to be here today, particularly because, as Bernard just said, we have been at this thing for quite some time, a very long time, and it's gratifying to see today that some recognition has come for the asset class in this part of the world. Usually when you're asked to say a few words as a chairman, you start thinking back to the days when it was for only graying gentlemen, who had been hit by the vicissitudes of this world and asked to speak about their experiences and so on. So here I am, agreeing, as you can see, and of course hit by the experiences. I think before I say anything, there's a bit of context to the ecosystem that we're talking about today. And I just want to go back to the early 90s because Ghana has always been at the forefront of pushing this industry in sub-Saharan Africa. A lot of people probably don't realize it. But when CDC and USAID in the 90s decided to look at the continent, Ghana was one of the countries they first looked at. And so that's where they first looked at finding fund managers at the time and then trying to establish an ecosystem. And I remember at the time, the key players, or the people who really pushed this, were people like Dr. Botre, Kwesi Botre, Dr. Shagbo, who used to run FinSap at the time, and Dr. Agama, who was the governor of the bank. And of course, the idea was to try and develop a scheme for providing long-term funding to the private sector, which had just begun to stabilize after years of being in the doldrums. And that combination of those 3 people then coincided with another incident, which was the return of a number of people from the diaspora, professional managers who were coming to run businesses that their parents had started. And then, of course, the investment bankers that we all know, Ken, and those of us who then came. And my it was just for tutors. I was doing something very quietly at the African Development Bank, and Ken one day popped by, and I give credit to him for having introduced me to what was happening at the time. And I came back to set up, well, actually to take over the running of what was at the time the Venture Capital Fund Management Company. At the time, it was very rudimentary. We had 2 companies, both limited liability companies, and there's stories to that too. But just for the anecdote, it was very interesting back in the day, even trying to do due diligence on some of the businesses that we used to look at. And my friend Jacob is here. He remembers looking to invest in some of the companies. We would go into the neighborhood to ask around about the entrepreneur, find out whether he had two wives or whether he bought cars very often, just to know that our money would be safe, you know, with the investment. And then we had situations with founders who were trying to pass on succession. And we would talk to an elderly gentleman about passing on the business to his son. And he would then immediately say to us, "Are you trying to get me to die?" You know, and stuff like that. So there were interesting times. But in any event, very quickly, we set up that, run that fund for a number of years, invested in a number of businesses, which some of which still exist, Voltic being one of them, a famous one, Lisa Freak and others. And DataBank at the time was very instrumental in helping us with a pipeline of interesting deals, some companies which we went on to IPO and so on. But clearly, again, we needed to have traction. And I think against the context, backdrop of all the reforms that have taken place, the setting up of Venture Capital Trust Fund in 2007, and you know all the lessons that have been learned, the need to probably look at bringing in fund managers, pension funds, currency, local currency funds, and so on. I think it is only timely now that, against this backdrop, the establishment of an association such as this is necessary. And therefore, for me, I'm very pleased to be associated with this initiative, and I'd like to congratulate Sam and the founding members, Matthew and Jerry, for this initiative. And I really hope that this will now give us the traction that is necessary to help push this asset class, which will be so essential in harnessing resources for the private sector in this country. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mauli. The mask hides the gray, so it has its advantages. Thank you so much. So in my own media journey as well, covering business news, VC hasn't been such a big thing. I mean, in those days, you go and cover a bank story, and then you interview Frank Edu or something, and you say, "You guys keep asking us all the wrong questions." Some of the things that, or the places we need to grow in Ghana is the VC community, because the banks can do everything. And I think it was only this week that the BNFT gave a front page on the same subject, that a lot of times we approach this whole thing as if it's just one source of funding. So we've come a long way to now have an association being formed. So Mauli, thank you for the leadership. We appreciate it. And also to VCTF, because to think that this organization can actually sponsor an event at a hotel like this with full AC, with food and everything, and pay the MC too on time as well. It means that there's a lot of things going well. So, I mean, I want to welcome the CEO to just give us a sense of how excited Venture Capital Trust Fund is, that this ecosystem is morphing into something that will become very, very appreciable and significant. So please help me welcome Yao Osu Brempong for some quick remarks.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Ghana Venture Capital and Private Equity Association, distinguished invited guests, distinguished members of the press, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It is really an honor to see the Ghana Venture Capital and Private Equity Association come to life. It has been a long journey, and I'm so excited to see that the institution I head, Venture Capital Trust Fund, is the proud sponsor of this launch. We are so proud to be here today to stand with the professionals and practitioners of the industry, the Minister of Finance, who I know will join us later, government officials, the media, and all distinguished invited guests for the launch of the Ghana Venture Capital and Private Equity Association. We share in the dedication of the association to the growth of the venture capital and private equity ecosystem. Looking at the mission of the association, we have no doubt that the leadership and members of the association are poised to champion a good cause in advancing the standards and best practices to safeguard both investors' funds and investees' businesses for national development. As most of you are aware, the government of Ghana in the year 2004 established the Venture Capital Trust Fund by an act of parliament to provide patient capital to small and medium enterprises through venture capital financing companies, and to develop a vibrant venture capital and private equity industry in Ghana. It has been a journey with its ups and downs. During this period, Venture Capital Trust Fund has invested in 7 local venture capital funds with a total industry asset under management around $110 million US. Over the next 5 years, we expect to invest a new tranche of $100 million US in the market, catalyzing more funds, investing in the sectors that leads to economic transformation and jobs. However, a missing link in the works of the industry has been an association to serve as its mouthpiece. We at Venture Capital Trust Fund strongly believe that the formation and the launching of the Ghana Venture Capital and Private Equity Association today is a step in the right direction to take the industry to the next level. Hence, our unflinching support and sponsorship of the launch. VCTF is the most vocal supporter of the VC/PE ecosystem along the government quarters and will continue to provide catalytic funding for the development of the industry, an industry that supports the growth of small and medium-scale enterprises to expand and create jobs, leading to economic growth. We will continue to support the association to deliver on its mission and vision. At this point, I would like to thank the Minister of Finance, Honorable Ken Ofori-Atta, for adding venture capital to the Ghana Economic Transformation Program, which has enabled us to provide the kind of financial support we have been giving to the association, including the sponsorship of this launch. So you know where the secret is coming from, right? We look forward to a vibrant professional association serving as the mouthpiece of the industry and capable of engaging government for the necessary policies and regulatory framework that will guide the development and growth of the industry in Ghana. We have to actualize the dream of making Ghana the real gateway for fund domiciliation in the sub-region, coupled with allied professional services that enhance service delivery and job creation. On behalf of the Honorable Minister of Finance, trustees, and staff of the Trust Fund, I wish the association the very best of the day and a good lunch. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for those nice remarks. Thank you for the sponsorship as well. Long may it continue. And I didn't hear an amen. Very important. So we're going to do a couple of things. We have 2 panel discussions, but those panels will be separated by a very important presentation. So the first panel is essentially going to talk about the what, where are we, okay? So he gave a bit of hint of that. 7 companies have been invested in. It's a few years. They are looking to another 100 million. We want to showcase some of the beneficiary companies. We want to have a clear sense of what this has done. Then the second panel will look at some of the challenges that the industry faces and what has to be done to move us to the real next level. Now, I will moderate the first panel, but the second moderator is Emmanuel Alex Asiedu, who is a seasoned banker, head of investment Africa region for Standard Bank, and chairman of the Impact Investing Ghana. So put your hands together for Alex. Give us a wave. So he will deal with industry people on questions I cannot ask. But for now, I want to invite my panel members, and we've chosen a panel to represent the various sides of this. So Efri Oware is the CEO of Axis Pensions. He's co-founder and group CEO of Axis Pensions with over 14 years experience in the investment management and pensions industry. Please welcome Efri with a round of applause. Also privileged to have the founder and managing director of Samba Foods, which is a Ghanaian indigenous food processing company, focuses on ready-to-eat foods condiments and seasonings, which are made for the domestic and export market. Mrs. Letitia Osafuado, please put your hands together for her. Oh, are you clapping because? Yeah. Very happy to have her here, madam. Thank you for being here. We also have the CEO of Rising Sun Montessori, established 2007, 3 campuses. Currently, the CEO has over 20 years experience in senior management. He has worked everywhere. I mean, he has done Standard Chartered, Barclays, Fidelity, Unilever, all kinds of places. He's a big guy. Put your hands together for Patrick Echampong. Patrick Echampong. And I think you cannot discuss where we are without asking Yao to join us, because you are part of the architecture. So if you can help me by removing this contraption, then I'll get the panel to answer a few questions. The objective of this panel is, so where are we? Where are we as an industry? Has the concept of VC been proven adequately in Ghana? What can we showcase as our poster boy? You know, some people have poster boys. Ronaldo is the poster boy of the Man U system, even though he's not working. He's their poster boy. Liverpool's poster boy is Mohamed Salah, ruthlessly efficient. So who are the poster boys and girls of this? Before that, let's test our mics. Just make sure you have a mic next to you, and then just introduce yourself and say hello to us. We have just 20 minutes to do this, so I don't intend to ask you too many questions. So if you can just test the mic, free.
Hello? Hello? Yes, it's a pleasure to be here, and let me start by congratulating the Venture Capital and Private Equity Fraternity. Congratulations for this very noble initiative.
Thank you, Efriye. Madam?
Yeah, good morning, everybody. I'm Letitia Osafuado, the founder and CEO of Samba Foods. I'm also excited to be here. Anything that goes with the financing of SMEs, I'm so passionate about. And I'm ready to take home a lot of information from here. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Patrick?
Thank you. I'm Patrick Echampo. Very excited to be part of this team. I believe we're going to make Ghana a great place by contributing our quota as business owners, and your quota by providing support, financial and otherwise. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, we've heard from you. So I'm going to ask you the first question. How old is this Vcpe industry in Ghana? And what was the most important highlight of its existence?
Thank you, Ben. In terms of the age of the industry, I think I will struggle to answer. When the chairman was actually making his remark, I mean, he said the industry has been in existence for some time now, but it wasn't well or formalized. In 2004, the government of Ghana realized the need to formalize the industry, to make sure that there is an alternative source of funding for especially small and medium enterprises, because all that we know has been the traditional source of funding, which is the bank, which especially startups struggle to access. And for that matter, the Venture Capital Trust Fund was established by an act of parliament, specifically Act 680 in 2004. And so
you can say we are 15 to 17 years old.
To 17,
a decade and a
15
half.
years. Okay.
A decade and a half.
We started operations in 2006. And when venture capital was established, it has two clear mandates. It was given two clear mandates. The first mandate was to provide funding to SMEs through venture capital financing companies. And that means we were set up as a fund of funds. So sometimes people come to us directly. We do not invest directly. We invest in funds, and we have a lot of funds here. And then our second mandate is to develop the industry. So in terms of how far we have come, let me look at it by way of our mandate.
Yes, sir.
And the first mandate is to provide funding through venture capital financing companies. Over the years, we've been able to set up 7 funds. We can talk of Activity, Bedrock, Ebankese, Gold Fund, Fidelity, and Oasis. And then the latest one is Industrial Support Fund. So these are 7 funds that we have been able to set up to raise funds in the country. And these funds, we have committed an average of about 110 million US dollars. And venture capital has committed about 30 out of that. So what it means is that for every dollar that venture capital has been able to commit, there is about 3 additional dollars that has been raised by the fund managers. These fund managers, the 7 together, have invested in about 60 companies. And I'm happy to see 3 of them sitting here.
16 or 60?
60.
60. Go on.
So the funds have been able to invest in about 60 companies, and quite a number of them are doing very well. And I'm happy we have 3 of them here. So in terms of outside even venture capital trust fund, there are companies that have benefited from venture capital and private equity funding. I can talk of Carl Bank benefiting from other PE funding. I can talk of Fidelity Bank benefiting from PE funding. So the funding has been there. But if you come to venture capital, I mean, what relates to us, we've been able to invest about a little bit over 100 million US dollars over the period that we have been in existence, and we have these funds have invested in about 60 companies. We have some of them here, others that are not here. We have Rising Sun. We have Caltech was an investment that we exited some time back, and then we have other companies. So I'm sure the beneficiaries are there, and then they will actually talk about us. But let me add one. In terms of developing the industry, I mean, there are quite a lot of industry professionals here that we have helped in their, I don't want to mention names other than that, otherwise I'll actually find myself in trouble, but I can see quite a number of professionals here that have passed through our training. What is happening here is basically venture capital has been an active part of it, and the fact that we are here talking about venture capital financing, launching an industry association means that we are actually playing the role that we were established to set up.
Let me ask you a quick question before I listen to the stories of the 3, because I guess we brought these 3 because they represent very good examples: education, food, pensions. Very interesting examples. So from what you've said, I see some equations. There's VCTF, you are 1. There's 7 VC companies. There's 60 beneficiary organizations in 15 years. What is the constraint on that equation? Is it the amount of money you have? Is it the number of competent VC companies? Or is it the number of eligible guys here? Because this equation could easily be 1:15 to 20,000. But it's 1:7 to 60. So clearly there's a constraint. What are the most important constraints hampering the growth of this industry?
If I'm to talk about our constraints, the number 1 is funding. And I have to say that it's very unfortunate that the very institution that was set up to provide funding to SMEs, our problem is funding. And this is so because when Venture Capital Trust Fund was established, we were supposed to get 25% of National Reconstruction Levy, and that was to become our permanent source of income. Unfortunately, in 2006, the very year that we started operating, that levy was abolished, and it has never been replaced. Our second source of funding has been budgetary allocation from Ministry of Finance, and that has been, over the years, it has been on and off. And so we are still in discussion with the ministry to, 1, get us a permanent source of funding so that we can actually deliver on our mandate. So that is our major
Fantastic.
challenge. In terms of players in the industry, yes, there used to be. We don't have too many of them, but we have a lot of experienced ones. And if the funding were to be there, I'm sure we could have developed quite a number of fund managers. And we could have also prepared quite a number of
Fantastic.
companies that we could invest in them. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing, Yao. Please put your hands together for Yao. I think that was very good. So what I want to do now is to hear your stories. So, Mr. Champong, Sunrise Montessori, I want to hear your sunrise story. Sorry, did I say sunrise?
Rising sun.
Okay, sorry, I used the wrong soap to bath today. Forgive me. So I think of sunlight. Forgive me. Rising Sun Montessori. Give us a 3-minute account of how the company is evolved and your own VC story. At what point? Because I'm sure you're a beneficiary of venture capital, and you yourself are a finance professional. So walk us through how you started, and at what point you needed funding, and why you didn't go to a regular bank, and why you are such a good poster boy for VC in Ghana. All in 3 minutes.
Thank you. The story started around 2000. The idea was we need to build a school. Why? Because my wife and I found that there are a lot of Ghanaian children who are not confident, who don't believe in themselves. So we said, we are going to build a school. We are going to start with our own kids to tell the world that we believe in what we are doing. My wife is an educationist by training, so it made it much easier. 2004, 2005, 2006, we put up our first school block with our own finance. 2007, we started. We hit the ground. It was really tough. Then we had 2 of our kids. We withdrew our kids from Faith Montessori, and then we started because we did a strong sale. We were doing house-to-house visits with flyers. And it was like, why would this chartered accountant, ex-banker be doing a school? And we said, yes, we are doing a school because we believe it's great. We believe we have passion for what we wanted to do, and above all, it was exciting. Then we sold off some of our vehicles to put up another school block. And it was like, let me put it this way. In the local parlance, when you are selling your car, because I sold off my Mercedes-Benz, I sold off another car that I had bought not that long ago, and we put all the money in the building because it was just growing and we believed it was going to be something great. We started off from our compound. We were living on an acre land. We put up the school building on one side, and then we started. Then it started growing, and then we had to acquire adjoining properties. Eventually, we even had to move out of our house, rent a place for 5 years, constructed another house in another 5 years, and then we pulled down the old house that I had spent most of my working career building. Indeed, to do that, I had to send my wife and the family on holiday because it was like, are you crazy? Why can't we use this building for the time being as some classrooms? And I said, it wasn't fit for purpose. It was residential. Anyway, she agreed. Then we got to a point, the initial building had just preschool up to primary class 2. And then we had people coming in, so we needed to start. You approach the bank and they'll tell, oh, Patrick, yeah, we know you very well, but your school is less than 4 years, so you don't qualify. The risk is too high. Then we had to be borrowing from some of the non-banks. I remember we bought a property for 50,000. We wanted to demolish it eventually. 50,000 at an interest rate of 7% per month. And everybody said, "You are crazy." I said, "I'm not crazy. If I look at the value in 5 years' time, it will far outweigh whatever I'll pay for that building." So then I went for finance from a non-bank, bought it. Then later on, I refunded it from another non-bank at a cheaper cost. And a year after, I refunded it from Agri Development Bank at a much cheaper rate. And it was because of my background. Then we needed to do further expansion, and the issue was, where do we get the money? So I approached a number of venture capital firms for funding. The challenge was, for me, it was not just money, but money and advice, and money plus somebody who will support me in building structures and in making sure we have good governance. And I believed private equity was the best route because I had had a brief stint in private equity. And so we brought on a Bankese, venture capital. It was wonderful. At the point they came in, we're doing 300,000 Ghana cedis per annum. Now we are doing well over 12 million Ghana cedis. Wow. And that is just 10 years.
Wow.
So it's been massive. It's been phenomenal. It's been exciting. And there is always something to do. All our 3 locations. The plan was to do 10 schools.
Wow.
We have done 3. Why? Because money. We are constrained with liquidity. All our 3 schools, as we speak, are full.
So you have 3 different
We
campuses.
have 3 different locations. We are in Tema, Lashibi, within the NTHC estate. We are in Weja, around the West Hills Mall.
Wow.
And then we are in Dome, just behind the PBC estate.
Wow.
It is, all the campuses are full. And
how many
campus,
years has this been? How many years since they came in?
Private equity came in 2011.
Wow, so 10 years.
10 years. And
Wow.
all the campuses were full 3 years ago. We have a lot of enrollments coming, prospects coming on board, but we aren't able to enroll because we don't have the classrooms.
All right. Thank you. I really wish we could hear more of the story, but I want to hear also from Mrs. Osafuado. But thank you so much for sharing. Please put your hands together for, wow, amazing. What is your own story, madam?
Thank you so much. Hello.
Yes, you are on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Distinguished audience. My story is quite different from Mr. Free, Mr. Champo. I would say because, you know, when you look at the industrial landscape of the country, you can see that services, trade and commerce, and manufacturing, services and trade and commerce are doing pretty well as against manufacturing, who has to add a lot of other ingredients to make one product. And unfortunately, that is where we are. And I would say that our growth pattern has been quite checkered and it's a bit slow. Why? Because of what we are doing, and that is agribusiness. And agribusiness has its own peculiar challenges. Samba Foods, which was started in my kitchen, and today on the stock exchange, is something that we should clap for us. Really frying shito and putting it on the world map. Wow. As the first company to commercialize the production of shito and distribution of shito and other products needs another clap. Thank you so much. You know, I returned in Ghana, and up until 1993, up until then, almost all shitos were produced in the houses. Am I lying? Yeah. There was no ready-made shito where you go to the shop and grab a jar. This was the market's niche that I saw at that time, or an opportunity, and I said I was going to grab it. Without any thinking, without thinking through the process, I saw a need, I thought I knew how to make shito, and that was it. And if you start on that note, today I've learned it, it is very, very, very difficult. You may burn your fingers big time. And I'm telling you, others who followed suit have burned their fingers big time. So if you see the shito market, there were lots of them. But to really sustain it and grow it has been a problem. And Samba is proud to be here today. Samba started with funds that was, for my own funds, that was less than $10. And about a year later, I had my first ever loan from the PAMSCAT credit scheme from NBSSI, which also helped me to move to the next step. The next one was the bank, you know, actually observing my operations, decided to give me a loan of those days, 3 million, that is about 300 CDs, you know, which didn't need a collateral. So we did that, and then we came to 5 million, and then that needed it. So fortunately, my husband was generous enough. I must stress that husband was generous. Though the house belonged to both of us, he had to okay it before I was able to use it. So I got that loan, and I worked with it. We kept, you know, growing. And we said, okay, we were borrowing from the bank. But we had a hitch. And I believe if you grow rapidly too, it can also be a disincentive, you know, for you to, in business. We had a hitch with the bank. In our quest to grow, we actually, through the facilitation of Ghana Investment Promotion Authority or Center, you know, joined us with an Austrian company, you know, in the 49-51 share sharing ratio that we took. But unfortunately, these guys duped us big time. Oh. That time, I had facility from Canadian fund or something through ADB, and that fund went sour. I wrote a petition, I did everything. No, the bank wouldn't budge. But then, you know, they went to court and all kinds of things. We went through a hell. In our struggle, we heard of venture capital. Okay. And that is when venture capital came to our rescue. At that time, too, we've had requests from a global brand, Yams Restaurants, you know, to produce for their KFC restaurants in Ghana. They were actually setting out in Ghana. So with that as our argument, the venture capital came in to assist us. I must say, though, that it took too long a time for processing. And then you get the funds, and that is about it. Don't hear from them, no monitoring, no nothing. That is something that I found a bit odd. But after a while, they also became cash trap or something. I don't know the time. You know, there was a time that your operations were really down. Yeah, so they wanted to exit. You know, they wanted to exit. So what we did was that because of my terrible experience with the banks, I decided not to go to bank, but to share this company with others. And the next thing, fortunately, that came in was the stock exchange under the GATS arrangement. So again, we were the first company, SME, to be listed on the stock exchange under the GATS.
Amazing.
Yes, and that is what has actually helped us today. We are doing fairly well, and we need to expand more because the fast food chains, apart from KFC, we are doing the Domino's, we are doing the Chicken Inns, and even exports. So we really, really want to go a step further. It's either we go back to the stock exchange or we find an equity partner who would also assist us to grow.
Wow.
On the whole, I would say it is a little bit comfortable to use equity or stock exchange, the public funds, to run. Why? Because you are not under that strict pressure to pay the money. You need to double their, how do you call it, their shareholding, pay dividend and that kind of stuff. And of course, you must be very transparent. You must be a blue chip. You know, you need to really sanitize your operations before you can go to the.
All right, thank you so much for sharing. Please put your hands together for her. We are enjoying the stories, but time is limited. But thank you for the details. We appreciate the difference in the experience and for also letting us know what went wrong, so it doesn't look like everything is sugar-coated. So we appreciate you for that. Free Access Pensions, you have 5 minutes to also tell us your VC story.
Thank you, Bernard. Just before that, let me add to what the gentleman from the VCTF said. We believe the VCTF is playing a very important role in sponsoring entrepreneurs. Myself and my colleague Nana Boama some time ago were brainstorming what can be done to address the funding situation. And Nana came up with a very good suggestion. We have a lot of money sitting in unclaimed assets in the banking system. Why not develop a policy to address that money to finance the VCTF? So maybe the gentleman can consider approaching the finance ministry for a policy to be crafted around this. Thank you. So our journey at Axis, I think it's been nothing short of an adventure. So myself and my co-founder Simon used to work for Data Bank. Reverend Ogami Tete was our boss at the time, and the Pensions Act was being formulated, and Reverend Ogami detailed me to be like a point person for Data Bank in the engagement with the pensions regulatory, at the time, pension implementation committee. And so in my engagement with the consultants, I realized that administration capabilities was going to be critical, in the new industry. And so we thought, for administration to be successful, you need a robust system. So our idea was simple, to create a pensions management software which could be licensed to pension operators as a service.
Okay.
And so seized with this idea, we resigned to start the journey. And
did you get his blessing in your resigning?
It was difficult.
He didn't want you to go.
Several promises were made, to get us to rescind our decision. But we thought there was something, really great about the idea. And so we started raising capital from a few people we know in our social and professional life. We were happy to have raised quite a good amount of money from about 4 angel investors. And so there we started. Speed was of essence, and we wanted to build a software before the industrial operators could be licensed. And so within a year, we had, developed the software, the core functions of the software, and deployed a beta version. Now, commercializing it was difficult. All the institutions we spoke to at the time, we saw as potential operators in the pension space, were not very excited about it. They wanted a system that was tried and tested, something that has been used in a more advanced pensions environment. And so we thought, in order to save the business, we thought it was prudent for us to get a pensions management license so that we could utilize our own software and demonstrate how good it was. And so that's how...
So you entered the pensions management space not as your original intention.
Absolutely.
I see.
Absolutely.
So Access Pensions was an accident.
It was an accident, purely an accident.
A good one.
And so then we were, with a dream to start a pensions management company with our capital. So Matthew was one of the first people we went to. At the time, the industry had not been licensed. That was in early 2012. And so we said, why not put some money into our business? Matthew was not quite comfortable to invest at the time because he felt there wasn't certainty around the licensing environment. It wasn't too clear whether government will allow the industry to function. And so it took a bit of time, but Matthew came to the table after almost a year of engagement with him. And so to cut the long journey short, at the time Matthew invested, we had run out of capital, and so his money was really like a lifeline to us.
This is Oasis Capital?
This is Oasis Capital.
Matthew, give us a wave. Where are you? Put your hands together for Matthew.
Yeah.
He's on the next panel.
So the investment by Oasis was like a bridge between, failure and survival. And I wish to say it was a lifesaver for us. It was also a lifesaver for our shareholders who had become very agitated about the viability of the business. Private equity was an eye-opener for us. I mean, in addition to the stringent reporting requirements it imposed, it also imposed a certain level of discipline on us as entrepreneurs to think deeply about the business model we are running and to develop core competencies that would enable us to compete. And so it's been a good experience. Post-Oasis, we've also had another investment from an international private equity firm.
Wow.
And we can't say anything but wish the industry well.
Amazing. Put your hands together for a free as well. Do we have a rep from the Ministry of Finance here? Okay. We need to just be sure so we manage our time well. All right. I think this is great, right? 3 different industries: education, foods, pensions. What are your thoughts? I'm ending with you, actually, Yao. These are 3 of your children.
I must say that today is one of my happiest days since I was appointed the CEO of Venture Capital Trust Fund in May 2017.
Wow.
Because over the years, wherever you go, I mean, it's negative. But today, I am happy that I'm hearing the positive side. And one of our outstanding, they kept on mentioning Matthew. I call him Matthew anyway. Who was this fund manager? One of our achievement is Oasis. When he formed Ebankesi, he raised 10 million USD. And we have to seed him with 4 million, which was 40% of his fund. Because of the way he was able to manage the fund successfully and invest in companies. His second fund, he was able to raise 50 million USD. And we gave him just less than 2% of that. Most of that funds came from outside. And that is the work of venture capital. Because we seeded in him, he's been able to raise a second fund. And about 40 million of that came from outside without the Ministry of Finance getting involved. Assuming we have 10 of that, you can imagine what we can do. And as you rightly said, over the years, we've invested in only 60 companies. Assuming we were to have more funds, we could have invested in thousands of companies. And even if 10% of them survive, it will make significant impact on the Ghanaian economy. It's unfortunate the Ministry of Finance is not here yet. I wish they were here so that they take lessons from what is happening, and that way they could have actually given us more money to be able to perform or,
We will
or
send.
achieve on our mandate.
We will send the video to them.
Okay. So what is happening here actually is a clear evidence that venture capital
It works.
and it's working in Ghana, and given the opportunity, it will work more. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Put your hands together for the panel. So, the Ministry of Finance is not here, but I know they have a budget in 2.5 weeks or 3 weeks. We have to make every effort for them to hear parts of this conversation. Because I even think they need this news more than you think, right? That 3 good examples. And I'm sure there are other sectors. It's not just education. I'm sure there are good examples in health. We are talking about impact investing. The good thing about all these 3 companies is that what they are doing is not just a financial return. He's educating the next generation. She's feeding millions of people. And pensions. Today there was a big story about many adults not having pension. And the dependency ratio is going up. So I think the case for VC in these almost impact investing spaces is very big. And I don't know how you are marketing that. But a lot of times we only look at money. But look at the people who were queuing yesterday for job at immigration or whatever. So maybe you need to also change the story about the social benefit of the investment beyond financial return. That may be your job, and we have to help you.
You are perfectly right. But let me be very frank. I say things as they are. We started, when I took over in 2017, we started talking about our success stories. The following day, the kind of proposals that you get, and if you don't have the funding to be able to meet those kind of proposals, the kind of insults that you get, you are better off not even doing the kind of marketing. And so it becomes more of like the chicken and egg situation. It's not, we know we can get to our investee companies, do some of these, do television programs and all those things. But then the next thing is you will end up getting a lot of proposals to be financed, and the money will not be there. And so what happens?
Don't worry. Those questions will be answered on the next panel. So when Alex comes, and let me tell you who his panelists will be, but put your hands together for this panel. Thank you very much. Yao Owusu Brempong, VCTF, Patrick Echampong, CEO of Rising Sun Montessori, Mrs. Letitia Osafo Ado, founder of Samba Foods, and Efri Oware, CEO of Access Pension. Put your hands together for them as they take their seats. Thank you very much. Please bring my pulpit back so that I'll introduce the next panel. But we have a short presentation for you. This is still the launch of the Venture Capital and Private Equity Association in Ghana. We're live from Kempinski Hotel. We just had a very positive, exciting, but realistic assessment of where we are as an industry, giving us a very good basis to question what next. And I'm really looking forward to what Alex's panel will do. Some of his panel members include Matthew, Minister without portfolio. Matthew Boudoué J, CEO of Oasis Capital. Matthew, give us a wave. We're also expecting Reverend Ogbami Tete, Director General SEC. Reverend Ogbami Tete, give us a wave. Thank you. You were moved from industry into policy, so you can't escape. We also have, or we are expecting Kofi Finn, CEO of Petra Trust. Is Kofi here? Kofi is here, or Petra is here. Oh, Kofi is here, yes, the mask. I can't see you. Thank you, Kofi. Samson Akligo is supposed to be on this panel. Samson, where are you? Is that the finance ministry? Where's the finance ministry? Maybe they are in some meeting. Eh? They have to come. They have to come. And then, of course, Matthew. So that panel is coming up shortly. But I wanted to quickly bring up for a quick presentation on the association that we are launching today, why we need it, what it's going to do, how it's going to accelerate the next level. So please help me welcome Mr. Samuel Yeboah, who is the chair of the executive committee of the Ghana Venture Capital Association. Please put your hands together for Mr. Samuel Yeboah as he comes to do a quick presentation. Samuel, please use the other mic. This one I've polluted it. Put your hands together one more time for him. Thank you.
Okay, good. It's working now. Mr. Chairman, members of the Ghana Venture Capital and Private Equity Fraternity, distinguished guests, members of the press, ladies and gentlemen, those physically present as well as those who have joined us online. I'd like to thank you for joining us today to launch the Ghana Venture Capital and Private Equity Association. Now, the Ghana Venture Capital and Private Equity Association is an association of practitioners that are specialized in the business of private equity and venture capital, as well as those who provide services to the industry. And our membership is open to both active practitioners as well as aspiring ones. And as an association, our mandate is to strengthen the industry by establishing a standard of excellence that safeguards investors and investees and brings legitimacy to our members. As an industry, we are commercially driven. Although we are commercially driven, our interventions contribute heavily to economic development. And I would like to point out that most of our members are impact funds or fund managers. Now, for us to address the over 5 billion MSME financing gap that currently exists, we believe we need to strongly collaborate with ecosystem stakeholders, be very unique in our approach to financing SMEs, and you heard some of the stories that were shared today, and adhere to the highest ethical standards in all our activities. Mr. Chairman, through advocacy that influences favorable regulatory and policy for the industry, as well as training for both our members and ecosystem stakeholders, we will work to build a vibrant industry that makes transformational investments, like you heard, the likes of Rising Sun School, Axis Pensions and Samba Foods, and others, that will lead to making Ghana the preferred destination for private equity and venture capital on the continent, hopefully. This will give the industry, or this will help grow the industry and help alleviate the dearth of patient capital that currently exists for SMEs. And that gap is huge. So I talked a bit about our mission. Now I want to talk about our current membership. Our current membership as an organization stands at 15, with Venture Capital Trust Fund also doubling as a major sponsor. Now, this impressive pool of active and aspiring practitioners is made up of 9 local private equity and venture capital entities that are domiciled locally, 3 are regional, and 2 international. Of the 15 members, 6 of them are emerging or first-time teams with very strong track record in supporting and investing in small businesses on the African continent. 4 of them have local country strategies, which is very important for our local SMEs, as you've seen today. And 6 have a commitment to providing capital to the missing middle. And these are companies that are looking for capital anywhere between 100,000 cedis and 10 million cedis, which happens to be a major problem, not just in Ghana, but in other emerging markets. Mr. Chairman, I'm also proud to say that 50% of our members have women in key leadership positions, but we need to do more in that area. We need to move to the point where we have parity when it comes to women who are actually leading and running these funds. Now, in shooting to achieve the gender parity in industry that I just talked about,
We also, in addition to that, need to generate or develop the next generation of highly skilled capital providers, because the task that we have ahead of us is immense. We need to support the development of healthy investment pipelines for PE and VC firms that operate locally. We need to build the capacity of local fund managers so that the experience that Auntie Letitia shared is avoided in the future. And what we heard from Axis and from Rising Sun becomes the norm. We are therefore collaborating on a number of initiatives, one of them being the Emerging Fund Manager Program, which is a program that will develop the next generation of fund managers, and this is a program that we're working together with the Venture Capital Trust Fund on. This program will catalyze and accelerate new fund managers in the industry. The next initiative is the SME Developer Certification Program, which will build the capacity of all entities that are looking to support SMEs in the country. And this will ensure that we have a strong pipeline or quality pipeline, so we don't have everyone and anyone knocking on our doors like Yao just shared, but we have quality SMEs who will approach the industry for financing. And this is something that we're looking to work on with Impact Investing Ghana. We'll also engage the regulators, especially the SEC, and we have Reverend Ogbami Tete here. We'll also engage the SEC to ensure that there's development of favorable regulation for our industry, as well as work with the Ministry of Finance to ensure that the right policies are formulated, again, to make Ghana an attractive destination for asset allocators. Finally, on our initiatives, research and data is critical to what we do. And as an industry, that's an area that we will heavily focus on. Mr. Chairman, these initiatives will not be possible without a strong leadership team for the association. And I'd like to introduce the GVCA leadership team so we can acknowledge and applaud their efforts to date. So I'd like to acknowledge the board, the inaugural board for the Ghana Venture Capital and Private Equity Association. And if you all could kindly rise so we acknowledge you, this wouldn't have been possible without them. So Mr. Matthew Bwedu Eche, Mr. Jerry Parks, Mr. Brian Frimpong, and our own Mr. Yao also Frimpong. I would also like to specially acknowledge or recognize the executive committee of the Ghana Venture Capital and Private Equity Association, who for the past 3 months have worked tirelessly on volunteer basis to get this association to where it is today. And so please, if you can rise so we acknowledge you. Mrs. Yvonne Ofosu-Appiah, Mr. Ebenezer Arthur, Mr. Mensa Veli, Mr. Anthony Annan, and Mrs. Diana Kwashi, who unfortunately can't be here because she just had a baby a couple of weeks ago, but still would text me, asking me how things are going. Would like to say a big thank you to all of you. We can't tell the story of venture capital and private equity in this country without VCTF. And so we would like to especially acknowledge the VCTF leadership. VCTF under the leadership of Mr. Yao Owusu-Brimpong, who, since taking over, we've seen quite a bit of cleanup, in fact, significant advancement in private equity and venture capital from the days when there were challenges. and we really need to acknowledge this man for the work that he's done. Secondly, would like to acknowledge Hamdia, who for the past 10 plus years has been the champion of private equity and venture capital in this country. And so I mean, you guys are not doing her enough justice with your clapping. I mean, venture capital is where it is today because of Hamdia in Ghana, because she's held the fort till now. So we really need to give her her due. We would like to acknowledge the unwavering support of Hamdia and all the others, but we also want to acknowledge the trailblazers, some of whom are here today, and our own chairman, Mr. Mauli Abebio. Right? And I was hoping to see some other faces. I don't know if Stephen is here. Please, Mr. Stephen Enchimene, ask Mr. Stephen Entry Esimeng. And there are others who couldn't be with us. But these guys persisted through challenging times. We heard about the challenges with capital, making capital calls. Oh, I haven't seen Mr. Jacob Colley. How could I forget? Please. The mask, like you were saying, the mask actually hides people. These men and women, through very difficult times, continue to persist and pave the way for those of us who are now looking to further the cause, and hopefully we can do you guys justice by ensuring that we deliver on what you guys have started. I'd like to thank you all for your contribution, and I'd like to thank everyone here for coming. Thank you all, and God bless you.
Thank you very much. Please put your hands together one more time for Sam. That was really nice. A lot of hard work has gone into this. Congratulations, Sam. Well done to the team. Now we have the second panel discussion. We're all very expectant. So I'm going to just invite the man to chair that panel in the person of Honorable Alexa Siedu, he's the main man at Stanley. He's also the chairman of Impact Investing Ghana. He has all the questions for these very well-informed people. So put your hands together for him as he comes to lead the second panel discussion. And his panel members know themselves, but I think he will call them himself, right? I should call them for you. Okay, so Reverend, please come. Matthew, please come as well. You add a couple more. Use that mic. You add a couple more, right? Kofi Finn. Amdia, please join.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, I know our time is limited, so I'll just go quickly too. I have a very august panel here. Hamdia, the only woman on the panel. Hamdia served as the general manager of the Venture Capital Trust Fund for many years. And like you heard from her applause, she's played a big role in making sure that the industry does stay stable and afloat in Ghana. Then there's Kofi Finn. Kofi Finn, just introduce yourself in 4 words for us. 4. If you do more than 4, I'll chuck you off the time. 4, private actor, fund manager, just 4 words.
Hi, my name is Kofi Finn. I'm managing director of Petra Trust. Great. We're pension managers.
You did 6. Reverend, please introduce yourself. 4 words. That's one gone. Oh.
Reverend Ogbamitete, Securities and Exchange Commission.
Thank you. Right, great. Thank you. And then Matthew, introduce yourself.
Matthew Boadueje, CEO of Oasis Capital.
Great, great. Thank you. Let's give a round of applause to this august panel. I was listening to the first panel and the success stories, Samba Foods, Rising Sun. I think the third was Axis, and I was encouraged. But then when I was driving here this morning too, I saw all these, when you're driving through Accra these days, all these shops, they're just buying and selling imported things. And then when you stop at these traffic lights, all these young men begging you for coins, and you're wondering, what can we do to absorb the chaos that is coming here? And I look at that, and then I also remember what Mr. Ababiu said, that they started well, and then they lost traction. So I'm juxtaposing all these things, and I'm wondering, what does the future hold for this industry? And can this industry provide enough punch so that we have more success stories than the mom and pop shops we see on our streets? So that's why we are here. We'll flesh that out. What does the future hold? So I'll start with Kofi, since you're an industry actor. Where do you see the industry in the next 20 years? 20.
Thanks, Alex. I am an eternal optimist. And maybe in this kind of conversation, that's unfortunate. But it might not make me see things as they really are. And I cannot imagine a downside scenario. In my opinion, this industry has a place in our economy. And if we do the right things, we should be able to grow it to the extent that it can begin to affect the country the way you're describing. In times past, we used to say that there's not sufficient capital available to seed funds, to launch venture capital funds, and to drive that money into the economy. We can't make that excuse anymore. The private pension industry, which I'm a part of, which Free and Access are part of, is here, it's firmly established, and we've been able to gather significant amounts of assets. Unfortunately, we haven't had the impact that we know we should have as of today. But it takes something like this association, the presence of REV, and conversations like this to force the issue. Capital is available, expertise can be built, an infrastructure and an ecosystem can be developed if we all put our minds to this and we give ourselves a period of time with very clear action plans. So I'm optimistic.
Right. Eternal optimist. But then Hamdia. So Kofi is an optimist, but what would you call success for the industry in the next 20 years? What would you define as success? 20 players in the industry, 1,000 firms. What would you call a success in the next 20 years?
So what I see as success within the next 10, 15 years is to have an ecosystem that has an association that has about 100 members, where about 2/3 of them are Ghanaian, fund managers leading the way, investing across the region and across the continent. And as Kofi said, we really have to work a lot on the regulatory side and also on the policy side to ensure that the regulatory and the policy side to ensure that we really make a push onto the ecosystem, because funding we need to build more institutional investors, and so we need to build more institutional investor capacity so that they could invest in these funds. We need more fund managers, so we have to have more fund manager programs, and usually when the industry is growing, you will see a lot of spin-offs, which will happen, and that makes it look good. So I think that it is more on the policy and regulatory side, so we get more institutional investors coming in, and of course getting venture capital trust fund more money to be able to really catalyze, because you need to provide that level of catalytic funding to be able to encourage more commercial funds to come on board. And when you do that and you bring that expertise in terms of the structuring, you are able to get more commercial investors keen on doing it. Currently, we have investors investing in the funds, sitting outside of Ghana, investing in the funds. we have money sitting in this country that is not investing in the funds. And that's what Kofi is saying, alluding to. So what do we do to unlock that? And if you ask me for where I sit, I think it's more of the policy and the regulatory side. And when we get both of them to sync and speak the same language, we will go places. And I'm very optimistic about that.
So two optimists. But you're talking about institutional funding, you're talking about catalytic funding, you're talking about an ecosystem. But then you're mentioning regulatory and policy. And our boss is here. Reverend, it seems as if all roads lead to your table. What do you think that as a regulator the SEC can do to get us where Hamdia and Kofi want us to get to?
Okay, thank you, Alex. Let me start by saying that from the first panel, it was clear the impact that private equity, venture capital can have in the area of creation of viable firms, and by extension, creation of jobs to deal with the unemployment challenge, and also the potential to create wealth for investors also invest in that particular class. But one other exciting thing for me that I picked up during the first panel was the fact that one of the firms, the venture capital was able to exit through the capital market. Okay, so you had I think it was Samba Foods. At the point where the investor wanted to check out, they used the stock market as an exit, which is an important element in the development of the whole infrastructure. So we would see the future of private equity, venture capital as getting better, getting stronger, not only in terms of creation of jobs, but also helping to deepen the capital market in terms of providing an exit option for firms that are, if you like, nurtured through the very strict oversight that PE would give to them. And then it helps to deepen the entire ecosystem. So that's what I see. In terms of what the SEC can do or will do, I'll mention two things. So in April 2018, we issued guidelines, or some would see it as regulations, but if you look at our act, we have the power to issue use a number of tools to give direction when it comes to regulation. And one is guidelines. So we issued private funds guidelines in April 2018. If you go to our website, www.sec.gov.gh, you can find it there. Now, if you look in the guidelines, private funds is defined to include hedge funds, private equity, and then venture capital. So it provides the framework, because until the passage of the Act 929, private equity wasn't, if you like, regulated, by the SEC. But now with the Act 929 in place, private equity, venture capital activity comes under regulation. It's regulated activity. So the first thing that we did was to push to have the regulatory framework to support it, and that's a guideline. So that's the first thing that we have done. So anyone who seeks to operate in that space, you have the guidelines as a reference to look at what is expected of those who operate in that space. And let me say that we agree with the fact that when it comes to private equity venture capital, it requires light touch regulation. So that understanding is there. So in terms of the regulatory side, we have come up with guidelines, and you can find it on our website, private funds guidelines. Then the second thing I'll mention is that in May of this year, we launched our capital market master plan. which provides the blueprint for developing the capital market over the next 10 years. And the Capital Market Master Plan has 4 main pillars, okay? The first one is improving the diversity of products and liquidity of the market. Now, one of the strategic initiatives under the first pillar, under getting the Capital Market Master Plan, is promoting private equity and venture capital. So I'm trying to say to you that at the SEC, we see this space, venture capital, private equity, as an important factor going forward, and it's featured in our Capital Market Master Plan. We are working out the implementation of the plan, and one of the things we'll be doing will be to create working groups that will draw from the industry players. So certainly, with the creation of the Ghana Venture Capital and Private Equity Association, you now have one, if you like, one entity or one body that you can deal with as a regulator and take on concerns. One of the things that we believe is that we need to develop the market, and we are open to hearing from the operators, the market practitioners, and factor in their issues or considerations into the the regulatory framework, because we have a mandate to protect the investing public, but we also have a mandate to develop. So we have to play, if you like, a balancing role. But we are very much open to market growth or market development initiatives. So I think that that's what I can say from the point of view of the SEC.
Right. Thanks. Matthew, you heard Reverend. Do you think that the plans that he's outlined, and you're a long-term industry player, are enough to get us where we want to get to? Or do you think he should do more?
Thank you very much. Yeah. I think it's a good step. We still have a long way to go. I think Reverend would attest to the fact that even at the time of developing the guidelines, we had gone ahead of them, we're launching our fund. But I'm grateful to him that he gave us a hearing to allow us to proceed, and then later we got registered in that contest. Just like any other developing country and any other emerging market, you would expect that these things would progress over the period. So for me, I would also be an optimist to believe that we would get there. But it has to be deliberate. And I think that one of the contests that we have come to and the recent discussions that we are having is that if you look at the regulation, for example, the Pension Fund Regulatory Authority says you can allocate up to a certain percentage to alternative asset. Without being deliberate and specific, it's going to be difficult for us to get the asset to be allocated. Because, for instance, if you look at the asset managers, they are rewarded or they will get funds to manage based on their performance. But if we all believe that private equity offers opportunity for not just providing sustainable employment, but to avoid the statement that the finance minister made and said that when you finish university, you should begin to see the opportunity to look for job. And it is not wrong. I mean, I set up a business 3 days after university. That business never operated. But that energy and drive still has sustained me to today. So I believe that there are quite a lot of young people that if we have a working industry where there is patient capital, and the good thing about private equity practice is that it's not just giving people money, but you give them money and more. You give them money by giving guidance and support. You also encourage people to continuously adapt the right practice. And we have mechanism to deal with intellectual dishonesty, which is the bane of business in this side of the world. I recall before I set up Oasis, I was working for a South African group, and the CEO came to Ghana. We're having a simple discussion, so I took him to one of the investee companies, and he asked the business owner that, what is the main cause of business failure? And he said, it is employees, right? But I also said I disagree, because in my view, the number one cause of business failure, for example, has been the business owners themselves. And I can bet you on any coin that in Ghana and maybe in other Africa countries, there is no such great source of business failure than business owners themselves. But private equity practice help people to evolve, build governance, put their thought in order, right? And that would help. And I'm very glad that some of the pension fund managers themselves have experienced the private equity practice. So we foresee the opportunity for putting more money. But that can only come if the policymakers give room and the regulators give room and relax. So far, I think the regulation is on the right course.
Right. So far the regulation is on the right course. But you mentioned a word that I find at once interesting and almost disturbing too. You said we should be deliberate. Yeah. We can be deliberate as private actors. But if there's no deliberation from the very top, we are not going anywhere. So the government is absent at this table. They just walked in. Samson, please come and sit down. Let's talk about being deliberate about venture capital. Unfortunately, my leg hurts me, so I can't carry your chair for you. So today, no, Hamdia, still stay. We still need you here, Hamdia, so please sit down. If somebody can please help. Hello, Samson Akligo.
Thank you. You always be in trouble. Thank you.
Samson, so, you're supposed to be part of this panel. So if you can just quickly introduce yourself. You are late. So if you do more than 5 words.
It's simple. My name is Samson Akligo, and I work at the Ministry of Finance, responsible for the financial sector.
Responsible for?
Financial sector.
The financial sector. Well, thanks. All right, so you caught us in the middle of this. We've spoken about where we need to get to in the next 20 years, the venture capital industry. We've spoken about the little planks that we need to use as stepping stones. We were just speaking about regulation, and then policy came through. But it's normally government that drives policy. And he spoke about being deliberate about it. So I'm asking you, what are your plans as government about being deliberate about moving our industry forward? Are you comfortable where you are?
I think the intention of government in developing the ecosystem for venture capital and private equity is quite clear, because I think since 2017, we have been very open about this conversation. One of the early things that this government did under the finance minister was that the key thing that everybody asked for is tax incentives and tax.
Sorry, yes, can you people hear Samson? I'm struggling to hear.
Oh. Yeah, my voice. I hope it's better.
I think you are wearing 2 masks here, or it's one.
Yeah. So one of the immediate things that we did was to make sure that the appropriate tax incentives are created for the private equity and venture capital ecosystem to thrive. And in a very difficult period, I think most of the industry people can attest to that. We took a decision to remove some of the tax inconveniences on the industry. So that was the first thing that we did. The second thing that we did was that we also realized that there were some key structures that need to be built in the economy. So one, we look at our own venture capital trust fund and see how we can strengthen it. We all know the history of the venture capital trust fund. We all know the good things that they have done. We also know the challenges that they had. So as we speak, we have put them under a World Bank finance project. The whole idea is to strengthen it and to make it more responsive to the private sector, improving the governance framework and making sure that investment committees and others are in place. Another thing that I also think is very timely is that when we work on a development bank that is about to start, and it was very clear where the minister was speaking that one of the key areas that we want to anchor is not only banks, but also the other non-bank financial institutions, which include this segment of the market. And I think that what we are looking forward to, in addition to what the pension funds are supposed to do, and also the cultural orientation, which I think this event amplifies, is that we want to see how collectively the development bank can work to see and anchor some of these VCs, especially those that can have a ripple effect on the economy. So I think this will be my first immediate remark.
Thanks, Samson. Thanks. Let me stop it here. Normally, when the government speaks, this is a low trust system. So when the government speaks, we are not really sure whether you will walk the talk or not. So let me throw it to the audience. I see Tralans here. I see Yvonne here. Tralans, do you think that the measures that Samson has outlined are enough for us to get where we want to get to?
Okay. That's almost like a trick question, right? There is never, never, never enough in this game. And I hope that what we all do is to keep pushing, and I'm glad that we're setting up goals for 20 years. And we've got to figure out what we need to get to those goals. So no matter what we do, we have to say to ourselves, what else can we do more? What else can we do that's better? So the short answer is enough is never enough, but we must push forward, and it's a good thing to start. But one of the questions that I have, or one of the challenges, is trying to understand what the regulations are. And I think we've talked about this. Part of the frustration is if you ask 5 different people what a particular regulation means, you get 5 different answers. That's very, very difficult to work with. So I hope as we go forward, we would involve the people who are playing in the game in the development of the regulations so that everybody understands it. Thanks.
So Reverend, he spoke about regulations again.
Well, so I think the point Tralans made was the need for the players to be involved in developing regulations. I think he also talked about interpretation. We typically would put out in our guidelines that if you want interpretation of the guidelines, you come to the SEC and our interpretation is final when we do that. So maybe there are other people who will give different interpretations. I can't speak to that. But in terms of the process that we follow when we are developing regulations, we do involve the market players. The way we work is this. So we have the guideline or regulations developed in-house or by, let's say, a consultant. And then after we have done some internal discussion on it, we share it with the market players, and ask for input and feedback. Now, when the market operators give the feedback, then we weigh the feedback. Where we are convinced, we take it on board. Where we are not so convinced, we may engage and then come to a conclusion. So there's an iterative process that involves the market players. And I can confirm that with the private funds guidelines that we issued. Matthew is here, Jerry and co. Then we didn't have the association, but we picked out the advisors that we knew were involved in the space, shared the document, the draft with them, and they actually gave valuable input. So we are committed to that process. We would not just issue any guideline or regulations without drawing the market along. Alex, you used to be head of GSI, and you know that there are so many guidelines that we bounce off you. So we'll continue to stick with that process where we, allow the market operators to give input, and then, helps us to make the regulations tight enough, good enough to, spur the growth. And let me quickly add that we are also open. And actually, one of the reasons why we are using guidelines a lot in these days is that it's easier, for instance, if after operating the guidelines, the market operators come up and say, you know what, this particular provision or that provision, there are issues, this and that and that. We can take a look at it, and without having going through a certain long process, we can do the necessary tweaking, So the mindset of the SEC is not just protection of the investors and integrity of the market, but also market development. So we are very inclined to engage the market operators so far as the ideas will help develop the market.
Right. Reverend, thanks. I realize that we've touched on a lot of the tick boxes. I didn't hear anybody talk about education. Ghanaians, especially Ghanaian businessmen, seem to prefer 100% of 1 to 50% of 10. They don't like to share ownership. So, Kofi, what do you think education can do so that those who want to raise funds and set up their businesses will understand that equity is also good?
Alex, thanks for that question. I think that's a good one. And in our experience, it's not easy for a Ghanaian small business to open up its books towards an institutional private equity investor to come in and tell it what to do. But that's changing. Only in our industry, you have 2 examples of private equity funded institutions that have been able to scale, return capital to investors, etc. So I think that's changing. And if people realize how big their vision can get, because most of us think small, right? If people realize how big their business can get with the right partners and the right capital, I think we can begin to see people take on more of these things. But there are some preliminary steps, Alex, and I think those are important for us to address. Della kept harping on this 1:7 to 60 ratio. We should not be happy with that at all. It's embarrassing that after so many years of talking about private equity and venture capital in this country, from the venture capital trust fund perspective, this is what we can see. I suspect that if you look at the private entities, they are almost catching up with that. Oasis in its funding, or Injaro, with what they've done in the last few years, the pipeline they have built, or assets that they have invested in, they've probably already caught up with that. So how do we really accelerate that? Matthew said deliberately. We need to be more deliberate, and we need to be much more action-oriented, right? The guidelines can be in place, but how do we get people to get up and begin to participate? We can't wait and say that, the markets will come to us. If I were a fund manager and I saw what somebody like Jerry Parks has gone through in the last few years to launch a local fund, I would rather just go and do a mutual fund and buy bonds and stocks, right? Why would I take myself through that to launch, in his context, a small local PE fund to provide a product for us as pension funds to buy? So there's just got to be something that accelerates all of these things. And on the education front, I would say more education for market participants in a way that is driven as policy, not just based on business intention. How do we get, 20 different Oasis or Enjaros raising capital, finding assets to invest in? How do we get that? How do we get 15% of pension funds invested in equities? And there's lots of little things that are happening to to get us in that direction, but it's not sufficient. I mean, Rev and I were on a panel that has proposed minimum percentages for private equity, venture capital in pension funds, right? We're waiting for that proposal to come to light. And when it does, the bottleneck will be that there's no expertise to allocate, and there's not sufficient expertise to invest. And we'll have to deal with that. But it has to be deliberate, and it has to be driven by Samson and by Rev. I'm looking at them. I'm glad I'm sitting.
So wait, I see Reverend's hand up, but he's always been my boss, but this time I'm in charge. So I'll let Hamdia rather speak. But before Hamdia goes through this thing about being deliberate, and I've also been a fund manager. When you are talking to trustees and you want them to invest in private equity, every 3 months they are marking you on the return. So they are looking at the certainty of a fixed income return versus the uncertainty and the nice language of a 10-year return. It's a no-brainer. It's a total no-brainer. And so because a fund manager wants to keep his job, he would take the easier path out, fixed income. So then Hamdia, I don't know how we can do this deliberation thing and make sure that more of those who own the assets will start funding venture capital, because otherwise in the next 10 years we will be having the same discussion. Maybe by that time there will be 120 out of 120 firms instead of the 60. But what do you think?
I have recently been in trustees, and then I have realized that there is actually a problem that needs to be solved. And that is exactly what you had said, because the funds are given to fund managers to invest, and actually the fund managers are on contract for 2 years, renewal every 2 years. And so when you have a fund manager that is doing 2 years, renewable every 2 years, marked based on certain kind of returns, if I am one of them, I wouldn't do a VC. It's a 10 plus 1 plus 1. And so I think that we should be deliberate on the MPRA side and said that for the alternative asset, we are allocating this money for alternative asset, and we need to find a manager to manage it on different terms. That is the deliberate, that has to come from NPRA. Because we gazetted a new asset allocation in 2017 to do 10% alternative assets. In fact, 15% alternative assets, which is REITs and Vcpe, 10% cap. So I always say 10% for venture capital. Until today, apart from, of course, you, Stanley, who has done an investment that I know, no fund manager has done investment in PE fund in this country. We had it 4 years ago. So that is where the deliberacy comes in. We need to be deliberate about it and say, if it is 10%, allocate the 10% on the side. Let's find somebody who can manage it under different terms, and then we can get it to work. So that's one. Two, we need to be deliberate about building capacity of trustees. It has to be done. The other thing I want to say, just to refresh the room.
So that's the education thing.
That's the education thing. It needs to be done. When we started at Venture Capital Trust Fund, there were fund managers who approved investment to investees who refused to sign at last minute because you are taking a board seat, and he doesn't want you in his company. That is changing because we have done a series of SME roundtables to engage SMEs. That is changing. There is more work to be done there. What we are doing on our part, as part of the funding from the World Bank, is to set up what we call the Fund Manager Development Program, deliberate, building the next generation of fund managers. We are actually co-creating it with the association and say, what does a fund manager need if you want to set up a VC fund? And then we work to build that pipeline. But we need to start the investment. It has to be done. And when that is done, then the others will follow.
Right, thanks. Reverend, okay, you are always a spiritual problem. What are your thoughts, please?
No, I think on the issue of being deliberate, I think Kofi alluded to the fact that from the NPRA side, I'm not at NPRA, I can't speak for NPRA, but I'm aware that there is some proposal, to, I don't say force, but to, if you like, guide the allocation of pension assets to a number of, different, asset classes, including the Ghana Stock Exchange as well, because we have to look at, the totality. So I believe maybe it's a matter of when the NPRA is able to issue it after its board is in place. But I was going to suggest that I believe the education in this case has to be very targeted, and I would encourage the Ghana Venture Capital and Private Equity Association to engage with the, for instance, the Chamber of Trustees, because the asset owners who typically would put money in PE or venture capital include pension funds. So it would be good for the association to forge some closer engagement with the Chamber of Trustees, because at the end of the day, they have a responsibility to make determinations on where the assets go, apart from whatever the investment guidelines NPRA would issue. So I think that has to be there. But from the SEC, we have a general agenda to improve or to contribute to investor education on different levels, okay? And we'll continue to do that. We are happy to have any input from the association on how our program can also reflect some of the things that they would want to put out there. But I think that targeted engagement between the association and the Chamber of Trustees would help. But I believe when NPRA issues those guidelines, at least it will be a start. It may not be, the ultimate, but it will be a start towards being, more deliberate in directing pension assets to some of these alternative assets.
Apparently, we've run out of time. I would have tested this a bit more, but given that we've run out of time, I'll just go around the panel in two words. Tell me about what you think about the next 20 years for the industry. I'll say mine first. Optimistic. Okay, after optimistic, large. So give me 2 words and then.
I think I have always been an optimist, so I'm optimistic and intentional.
Thank you. I think that I have some advantage, so I'll keep quiet and say that. I think that we should see ourselves as champions, and that we need to do.
Samson, 2 words, please.
Yeah. So my key words are that let's see ourselves as champions and people that build this industry from where we are.
Kofi, thank you, Samson. 2 words.
15%.
15%. Okay, you are done. All right.
15%.
15%. Yeah. Right. Great.
I would say make a difference.
Make a difference. 3 words, but you are the regulator, so we'll give it to you, Matthew.
I would also be equally optimistic, and I think we'll
optimistic. All right. I had deliberation, I had regulation, I had policy, I had optimism. Let's hope we get there in the next 20 years. Thank you very much, my panel.
Thank you very much. Please put your hands together for the panel. Kofi Finn, Reverend Obami Tete, Alexis Siedu, and of course Hamdia, as well as
private equity and venture capital
Ministry of Finance, who's representing the Minister, and Matthew Bwedi. We've run out of time. I just want to do the final quick thing before we go. So please bring back the pulpit. Please, this is not a place to be exchanging pleasantries. So you can do that when we close. Thank you. So we want to quickly take the official launch. I'm not even sure I'm going to do this. Please come. Yeah, come bring the
government policy, ensuring that government has the right policies in place to make Ghana a favorable private equity and venture capital investment destination. And then finally, there is the issue of ensuring that the investors the industry players deal with, as well as the companies we invest in, are protected. And so having the right standards that as an industry we all agree to abide by.
Thank you very much indeed.
Code of conduct that
So the plan is to have the keynote address and the launch. The thing about Ghanaian programs is that like there's a lot of talking in different places. So we've had 2 panel discussions, we've had a presentation, and now there's a final speech. But I know the man who's giving the speech is very reticent. He doesn't like long speeches. So he's going to give us bullet points. It's very, very short. This is the Minister of Finance's speech. So I don't know what degrees of freedom you have to vary his speech, whether you still have a job if you come and read a new speech. So just pray for him, because people don't want a long speech, right? But we still want assurance, and we want you to launch the association. So those are the 2 things you want to do. So please welcome again Samson Akligo. He is the head of financial institutions at the Ministry of Finance, to perform the dual role he has, to give us the minister's speech, and also to declare the association launched. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Bernard. Yeah. It's really an honor and privilege to speak on behalf of the Minister for Finance at this important event. Not too long. Thank you. To speak at this very important event. Not too long ago, he made a statement when he was addressing graduates at the University of UPSA. And that speech actually caught a lot of public attention. But the message was very simple. And maybe I'll put it in a more diplomatic way. As a country, we have struggled the path of development and growth since 1957. And the path that we have chosen has shown that in terms of our social structure and what we sought to do, government has become a very important engine of growth and jobs in ways that are too encompassing. The private sector and the role of the private sector has not been unleashed. And he was trying to encourage young people to say that when you're out of school, don't look at the public sector. Look at the areas that can get us to where we want to go to as a country and address jobs. I mean, we all know the startling statistics about the fiscals, or what we mean our budgets. We know how much of our taxes go into government payroll. We all know the impact of that on the economy. But unfortunately, the historical mindsets about finance and what it means for our country still remain heavily tilted towards the banking system. Unfortunately, in all our conversations, everybody thinks that if you want to build entrepreneurs and build businesses, you have to bring interest rates down, and you have to get the banks to give loans. We all know, and I have said this on many platforms, that bringing interest rates down requires even we sitting in this room than ever before. So I will try my best to summarize the long speech that the minister has to deliver. My message, ladies and gentlemen, is that the launch of this association is very timely and reflects the real values and essence of what we need to grow our country. The figure from the SEC and from the Bank of Ghana tells us that in practice, we are way behind what we should be. When you look at the data that we have, and it's quite revealing, pension funds today, because of the reform that we have done, are just about 5% of GDP. We all know, unfortunately, the precursor to the development of venture capital and private equity funds, which are the collective investment scheme, the basic ones, that's just about 0.7% of GDP. And in the SEC's classification of other funds, I see they're 0.9. But I'm sure if you adjust to capture venture capital and PEs, I will not be surprised that we might be talking about 0.001. Those are the stark realities. The reforms to do and improve the ecosystem starts from these points that I'll end with. The first one is the role of government. One, I think that we have done a lot over the past 4 years to strengthen the ecosystem. Some of the most difficult decisions for government have been taken. Some were even taken as far back as 2016. The first one was the new SEC Act. The new SEC Act has provided a more coherent and flexible ecosystem for the licensing and regulation of venture capital and private equity firms. And for the first time, everybody will see us as a well-structured industry that is well-regulated, and that parameters, when investors' money are given to you, it will be better protected. The second thing that is much talked about is fiscal incentives. I think when you look at what we have done again in the last 4 years, I mean, the beginning incentives for venture capital and private equity are there. I think recently we even removed taxes on management fees for the industry, which has been a very difficult one. The next level is how do you commit public resources in a very deliberate way to grow the sector? And I think that we have shown some examples. One of the major significant things that we did when some banks were not able to meet the minimum capital is to sponsor a government-backed private equity institution called Ghana Amalgamated Trust to support these financial institutions. The mindset is very clear, is that we want to put in people's mind that private equity and venture capital are very essential when it comes to restructuring and supporting companies in a real way and improve what they stand for, that we must support. And I think that that legacy needs to be protected. And we can see that we have saved a lot of jobs, at least over 5,000 direct jobs, and what I'm told, over 12,000 indirect jobs. So we are going to build on that, trying to make sure that as a country, we have a government-backed private equity fund that supports the ecosystem. We also hope that the development bank will deliberately anchor some private equity and venture capital firms across the country that will support real growth. The last thing is that we need to support the SEC to make sure that they have resources to promote education, do pension. We have to encourage the MPRA to enable pension reforms that would touch not only the private equity and venture capital market, but also the collective investment schemes. This work is ongoing, and we are working very closely with the SEC to make this done. I will not be able to capture all the ingredients that we need today, but what I can tell you is that we are very much interested in the success of the Ghana Venture Capital and Private Equity Association. We want to work with you and see how we can quicken the pace of this important industry. We want this industry not to only measure its performance in terms of what they do, but they should be at the forefront telling government the number of jobs that they are creating, the number of SMEs that they are supporting, and how they are linking those SMEs to the financial system, especially how they are being linked to the banks to access credit. And lastly, government is very committed to the development of the domestic rating agency system, which is very important as a key layer to support the market. And I think that all these interventions would shape the market and put you in a pole position to make sure that this all-important industry develops. On this note, I thank you so much, and on behalf of the Finance Minister, I wish you all the best in your deliberations and continuous work. And I'll wait for Bernard to let me know when exactly we will launch the... Okay, thank you. So, on behalf of the Minister for Finance, I have the rare privilege, and I think it's a distinguished honor, to declare the Ghana Venture Capital and Private Equity Association duly and formally launched. And God bless you. So God bless you, and God bless our country.
Thank you very much. Please put your hands together one more time. I was expecting some fireworks and things. You people, you don't want to spend money here. When people launch things, they do rebranding and they blow explosives and things. You just launch that, you are clapping your hands. Then you want media to give you traction. You are not serious. Sure. Do you know how lesser organizations with less impact launch their events? there will be aeroplanes and fireworks and things. So please, venture capital, give them more money to do a proper launch. I mean, imagine you are doing a story on 8 p.m. news and you say Ghana Venture Capital Association launched. Then you show something saying, I declare it launched. There's no light, there's no nothing. It's challenge its own way, you know. So please launch it properly. Anyway, so what we'll do is, before Mauli gives the closing remarks, I just need to give you a quick sense of what's going to happen. There will be some photos for the records, and the order of photographs will have the pioneers take their photo, Mauli, Ben, and Stephen, so please don't leave. Then the members of the GVCA, I think your names are on that list, you know yourselves, you take a photo. All panelists will take a photo. Then we'll have other groups, the VCTF will take a photo, the board, executive committee. Is there refreshment? Is there food? Otherwise, like I'll do a luta here. Come and keep us from 10 o'clock to 12. You don't give us food. Anyway, so I think Mauli, come and tell us whether you are happy with us or not. And what the future holds. Put your hands together for our chairman.
Thank you very much, Bernard. Thank you very, very much. It's been a very interesting morning. I'm sure you will all agree. And I just want to conclude by, again, saying that this industry has come a very long way, a very, very long way. It was very interesting hearing some of the success stories today and the role that the VCTF has played, especially after it was restructured, and the catalytic role it continues to play. I think it was very interesting hearing Alex's panel and some of the comments that came out of that, and the need for a very deliberate strategy toward pension reform, the SEC's role, and the intentionality of what we want to do, because that's really what will lead us to boost this whole process. I think also Sam set out the association's rules and objectives very clearly. Of course, very much in line with what I know, because I used to run the Africa Venture Capital Association some years back. I think there were a couple of things that I wanted to add on to for the executive committee to think about. One of them was information sharing going forward. The second thing was also to look at how you benchmark the managers and so on. And the last thing was, at all times, you have to try and speak with one voice, because, you know, there have been times when managers or participants in the industry find themselves in challenges, and everybody wants to go directly talk to the regulator. And I think it's important that we should all speak with one voice. I was very interested to hear about the initiatives regarding SME development, certification, research and development. And of course, one of the things that has always struck me, and I thought somebody would mention it, but it was about the requirements for investment managers or fund managers by the SEC. I'm told it's about 1 million CDs today, and I always wondered why it had to be that much, you know. But anyway, that's a conversation that might be had. But I was very interested also to hear about the capital markets master plan, and of course the need for support for market participants. And of course, it's a shame my brother Ken wasn't here, but of course Samson, the messenger, he's not being shot today. So thank you very much for your comments. And I think we would like to see, as Tralan said, it's never enough. So we would like to see continuous engagement and discussion around this subject. And that will be the way forward. So on that note, really, it's been a great morning. And thank you again for considering me as one of the pioneers. As I said, I've gone gray from my experiences, but that's life. Thank you very much, and all have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you, Mauli. And we just want to take a quick round of photos, so if the photographers will come forward. In the meantime, we're giving you lunch coupons as well. We hope you sit and have a chat as you eat. So, Mauli, if you can come up with Jacob and Stephen. It wasn't Ben, it was Jacob. Yes, so we'll do it here. So you move this away, yes. So, Jacob Corley and Stephen are considered the three of the pioneers. So if they can, please come and move this, yes. Come up quickly. Then we'll do the member associations. So all the member reps, GVCA members, and then all panelists will take a photo. Female fund managers here will take a photo. The venture capital team will take a photo. The board executive committee. So do they come up? They come up? Yes, please come up. So we'll just do Mauli, Jacob, and Stephen.
Unemployment. Young people finish school, they don't get jobs. And we have the business sector that can actually help recruit more people. And businesses are unable to start or grow because there's no funding for them. So what is missing is really bringing early stage type of financing to support startups and very early stage businesses to start and grow.
Despite COVID, Ghana showed robust economic growth. Now, where the world actually shrunk in economic growth, Ghana actually grew. It was marginal, however, it grew.
Wow.
However, the private sector, specifically SMEs that contribute
so those
to
are the
economic
three of the
growth, have
pioneering
been
members.
significantly starved of needed capital. And as of 2019, that deficit...
Thank you very much, gentlemen. The members of GVCA, please come up. The member organizations, I think your reps are here. Please, let's be snappy with this.
One of the advantages that we have,
And then the lunches at the restaurant. So the
is that we have a young
restaurant
population,
name is on the coupon you'll be
we have
given.
so many people going
So
to
please
the
make sure you are
school, so
there.
many people coming out.
GVCA members, thank you
These
very
are
much.
young people with all of their human capacity, all of their intelligence, their energy, and they're ready to work, right? And we, as a country, we don't have enough productive, sustainable economic opportunities for them. And what we need as an economy is to be able to build the capacity to absorb all of this and transform it into gold.
I believe that Ghana, like most African countries, is facing what we call the youth bulge. Can be a blessing or can be a curse. This means we need to create jobs for the youth that are coming in. We also need to feed the youth. And this provides a great opportunity for investment because if you look at Ghana, like most countries, we will have a very young population in the future. And this for every investor is a dream because I think this provides a very good opportunity.
The current situation is that we have evolved from a period where there was no private equity practice up until to 1994. That was when the first venture capital was established in the country. Fast forward in 2006 when the VCTF Act was passed, there have been some emergence of private equity practice, those that are of local origin and others that are coming from different countries that operate within the country. I think in this context, there's a bit of a need for investor education and also the small and medium-sized sector or business education for people to appreciate that you can finance your business in other forms by using private equity and venture capital other than the traditional bank funding, which people do know.
The Venture Capital Trust Fund Act, to be precise, Act 680, is an act of parliament that established Ghana Venture Capital Trust Fund in 2004. The mandate or the act mandated VCTF to do two main things. The first is to provide funding to SMEs, small, medium enterprises, through venture capital financing companies, or what we usually call fund managers. And then the second mandate is to develop the venture capital industry or the venture capital ecosystem.
So the Venture Capital Trust Fund actually is an investor and it's also a market builder. So we support first-time fund managers, raise funds, and we invest as catalytic investor. Usually that is what is supposed to happen because government has to catalyze the market for other investors to follow.
And again, in this area, we have done some quite amount of work, but we still believe that there is more to do. And one thing that has been lacking is an association that becomes the mouthpiece of the venture capital private equity industry. Over the years, the various players in the industry have been working on their own, and we at Venture Capital Trust Fund has more or less, apart from playing our role as an investor, has become was the mouthpiece of the industry. But we decided that there is a need to bring all industry players together so that we form an association that becomes the mouthpiece of the industry that will bring the players in the industry also together. And that is what we see today.
The private equity and venture capital industry is a nascent industry that, if adequately supported, can contribute immensely to Ghana's economic agenda. However, there are a few hurdles that must be addressed in order for this to happen. One of them being regulation. We need to ensure that we can engage the regulator to formulate the right regulation to stimulate the growth of the industry. Second, government policy, ensuring that government has the right policies in place to make Ghana a favorable private equity and venture capital investment destination. And then finally, there is the issue of ensuring that the investors, the industry players deal with, as well as the companies we invest in, are protected. And so having the right standards that as an industry we all agree to abide by. Code of conducts that safeguard the investors and the investment companies that we invest in. This is why we need a structured organization that ensures that these things happen.
What is happening now and which excites us is the fact that after being in existence for all these years, we are bringing together members to form an association. An association is important because it brings standards, it serves as a mouthpiece, and it also tries to promote more capacity, so in terms of continuous improvement, continuous development, the association will be doing that. And it's wonderful because then you are able to engage government in the best way in terms of what are the things that needs to get a nascent industry like this to grow and thrive.
Ghana has a great potential for economic growth through SME development, and the private equity and venture capital industry provides the much-needed capital and technical assistance to support this growth. We've seen a growing interest by the youth in entrepreneurship, and it therefore calls for a much stronger ecosystem and a well-structured industry to enable these entrepreneurs innovate, create jobs, and make a meaningful impact in their communities.
A vibrant PE industry is one of the catalysts that we've been waiting for. I would urge the leadership of the association to reach out to other players in the ecosystem, lawyers, accountants, valuation experts, people that advise businesses, entrepreneurial training, so that together there is a vibrant association that touches on all the important steps, important levers of development. That is how an industry can achieve sustainability.
One of the benefits that the association would provide is being able to groom the next set of fund managers that would be able to raise funds to serve the missing middle. And the association, through its work, through certain standards, through certain what the best practices are for the industry, through engaging regulators, governments, and certain policies, would be able to make the environment a bit more friendly for the first-time fund managers that are coming up.
We can also come together as one voice for public education and for our own benefit by way of training and sharing of ideas. It also provides a single platform where data can be collated and analyzed, which all guide us in our decision making.
The Venture Capital Association in Ghana is coming at the very right and perfect time. At this time, we need an industry body that will be recognized, that will provide the members, especially the funds, with the standards and guidelines that they should all follow. This would give a lot of confidence to entrepreneurs, regulators, as well as other stakeholders. And this is really what we need to make sure that this industry that has been with us for quite some time, but has been a bit in the shadows, gets the opportunity to come into the limelight and is able to really have its say when it comes to policy and have an influence on the developmental agenda of Ghana.
As an investment professional, I am so deeply grateful that the venture capital and private equity sector has evolved to create an industry association. Ayeko to the founding members, well done. And to fellow collaborators from the government, pension trustees, insurance companies, development finance institutions, high net worth individuals, but to name a few. The ball is absolutely in our court now.
At this point, the Ghana Venture Capital Private Equity Association is calling on all industry players to come and officially join the association. We are calling on fund managers, we are calling on individual investors, institutional investors, regulatory bodies, and government institutions to join the association. Because we, the members of the Venture Capital Private Equity Association, believe that the future of financing businesses and entrepreneurs in Ghana is venture capital and private equity. And if we have a very strong association as a mouthpiece of the industry, we believe members of the association, the industry as a whole, and Mother Ghana will benefit from it.